Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.
You are listening to the financialsurvivalnetwork.com. I'm Kerry Lutz on 1230 WBZT. Well, if you're looking for transformational change, if you're looking to really turn your life around, well, you're going to want to hear from this person. He's written a book. I'm sure you're familiar with him. It's called Poise, A Warrior's Guide. Gary Stokes is a coach to leaders of transformational change and president of Mountain Consulting, and designed and conducted research to test innovative strategies for reducing poverty. Gary, welcome back to the Financial Survival Network.
Oh, thank you, Kerry. I'm glad to be with you.
Hey, so the world's always in turmoil, as you've said often, and the key is keeping your cool, keeping your poise, and not letting it get you down. But that's always easier said than done, isn't it?
Well, I think it is, but the good news, Kerry, is my own experience and the experience of many people that I observed tells me that it's possible. Lately, we seem to have moved into a time in our American history, for instance, where we seem to have let's say that we have an unhappy country, or let's say that many citizens of the United States seem unhappy right now. And their unhappiness, here's the outline of the unhappiness. Get your guns out because things aren't safe. And it's smart to be cynical about everybody else's motives. Only my motives and my friends and family motives are valid, but most people's lives and perspectives are not valid, and so I have to be cynical about government, about banks, about business, about technology, about science. And there really is no good news. According to this group of Americans, everything's in collusion. There's falseness everywhere. And so we'd better get our guns and we'd better get our food stacked up in the garage or wherever people put that stuff. Mm-hmm. So I'm very intrigued
that's true,
about
isn't it?
how this has happened, how this is such a large group of our country when we're the greatest country on earth and the greatest country in the history of the world. Most of us would agree. But there's this tremendous amount of unhappiness with, I think it's probably a minority, but it's a large minority.
Mm-hmm. So what's the alternative, Gary?
Well, I'm very, as I write about these matters, Kerry, I'm interested in whether or not it's possible to take these kinds of political positions and live a happy life. And I would say my tentative conclusion is that no, it's not possible to take these positions and live a happy life. It's just not possible.
So what's the correct position then to lead a happy life?
Well, I certainly hesitate here to say what the correct position is, but as a man who wants to I want to have a happy life. Now, this happy, I know we can argue about what that means, and we can quarrel about life's vicissitudes and how much those should affect me, but for me, living a happy life has just become about the most crowning achievement of any life. I really believe that anybody who can be well-informed, be fully engaged, live a life, not go out to some mountain and hide, but live fully in our society and be happy, that seems to me to be a fabulous achievement. And I don't want that happiness to require that the person be rich or be better off than most people or I don't want any of these artificial advantages to be the key reason that somebody could be happy. So as we get up each day and look at life, and if we come up with all these descriptions that I've just outlined, where really there's nothing good, there's really nothing good to say. There isn't anything from this point of view that we hear that is happy. All of that seems to me to be like a victim story. This unhappy story is a story rising out of, well, I'm unhappy, I'm mad, I'm upset, I'm impatient, I'm resentful, I'm cynical, and none of that has anything to do with me. It has to do with you. You're making me feel this way, all the rest of you. So all this starts out in self-pity and then morphs into a victim story where I explain everything about my unhappiness in terms of you people who are doing something to me. Now we've got a full-scale bad explanation. I feel bad all the time. All of you are responsible for my feelings. That makes me even more angry, and it makes me feel even more self-protective. I got to get my guns. I got to get my food. I'm going to get ready to fight you all. And then I obsess about these matters, talk about them over and over with like-minded people. I tune into media where I can get support for this victim story. And then I don't see any end in the people I know who are like this. I don't see any end to it. I don't see people in this particular mode getting to any point of clarity where they say to themselves, oh, well, there are some good things about life, and I'm going to start focusing on those. This is not to say that people can't be concerned about matters, or that they can't be engaged in them, or they can't even be fully commit their life to them.
Well, Gary, let me give you an example, okay?
Yeah.
Yesterday, J.P. Morgan Chase just agreed to plead guilty for defrauding the American public through mortgage-backed securities. All right, this is both in the way they wrote the mortgages and the way they packaged them, for $13 billion. All right?
Yep.
And they're part of a gang that did exactly the same thing. Now,
yep.
I'm not going to cry over it. It happened. So it's history. It's done. Maybe they're still doing the same thing. Maybe they're not. Maybe justice was done, and maybe it's just a shakedown by the government. Okay? But it happened. They admit that they did it. So what's your response there? I mean, obviously there's something wrong with the financial system, that they were allowed to do it in the first place, that it took the government this long to get them to fess up, and that there's still a lot wrong in the financial system, but we all have to kind of put up with it, because if you want to go buy groceries in the supermarket, you got to use that paper or that plastic, so you're stuck in it. You're not a victim, but you're stuck in the system, whether you like it or not, unless you want to go live Gilligan's Island with the professor and Mary Ann. You have no choice. So what do you do?
Well, first of all, we know, you and I have talked about human evolution before. You know, human beings have always been locked in violence and bad ideas and power struggles, and people in power. We know from the history of the human race, we know that people in power often become corrupted with that power, don't handle it well, and so on. So, I mean, I don't get up every morning and expect our major institutions of the human race to be perfect or to be ethical every day, or. But so then I have to ask myself, well, this J.P. Morgan thing, does this describe the U.S. banking system? In other words, am I truly victimized myself by the U.S. banking system? And my answer for Gary Stokes is no. I live here in Prescott, Arizona. I've got a friendly little neighborhood. I've got a community bank. They're wonderful. They never cheat me. I'm protected. I've got quite a bit of money there. it's protected by the stability of the United States. This is a huge amount of money that the U.S. government guarantees that against loss. And I've lived for many decades in business myself, and I manage my money. And do I feel victimized by the U.S. banking system? Well, I know that those in power in the banking system can get out of control. I know they can make terrible mistakes. I know that they're human beings, so I expect problems. But the system as a whole has served me all my life without a glitch. What do I do with that?
Well, I got to beg to differ with you on that, because I think the whole country has been victimized by it, just by the nature of fractional reserve banking and the way that they can create money out of thin air and a whole bunch of other things. But on that regard, I'm not angry about it. I'm not bitter. It's just the way it is. And hopefully one day it'll change, and I'm not going to let that interfere with my personal happiness, and I'm not going to be embittered by it and, blame my failures or my shortcomings on J.P. Morgan Chase. Jamie Dimon doesn't even know that I exist. So why should I be angry at him?
Yeah, that's right. But you ask, how can we avoid, given this flood of bad news and victim stories that comes into our brain every day, if we have the TV set on, if we read magazines and newspapers, as we both do, we're very well-informed people. So this flood of bad news, this flood of failure, this flood of realities that could make me cynical, could make me depressed, comes in, and what am I to do? I think, first, as I said, we must avoid being the victim. We must avoid coming up with these bad explanations for our own personal unhappiness. You said you're not made unhappy by these things, and that seems like the sane response to me. If I'm vulnerable to all this bad news that's flooding in every day, then I'm just going to be a wreck. I'll end up in a mental hospital taking a drug. So you must take your position. You must, and especially someone who's in the media like you are, fielding, these issues every day. And then I would say another thing we can do is pick our spots. In other words, as a citizen, most of the people who have this litany of complaints that I outlined earlier about government, about other people. It's a litany of complaints about other people. Really, you'd have to say that such people don't like other people very much, don't trust them, and really disapprove of them most of the time. So, but I think the sort of the second thing to do, besides avoiding being a victim, would be to pick your spots. In other words, you're a citizen and you really care. I heard your radio show the other day, Kerry, and you said that you couldn't stop talking about Obamacare. That was what your own personal feeling was. Mm-hmm. You brought it up again, and you said, I can't stop talking about it. Well, I would say if we find ourselves riveted by an issue, then rather than merely talking about it all the time, we have to do something about it, be engaged in it in order to avoid being the victim. So I might say, well, I hate Obamacare, I'm going to do something about it, and you do. You talk about it on your radio show, so you have some influence. But most people who complain about this list of subjects that I outlined earlier, most people aren't doing anything except, complaining. They're
exactly.
I respect people who say, okay, I don't like that particular thing, so my congressman here voted against Obamacare, so I'm going to try to get him out of office. I'm going to really work hard the next year and a half to get him out and get somebody in there who is more friendly to this thing that I like, Obamacare, let's say.
Well,
so now I'm going to get on the phone. I'm going to go to the Democratic headquarters. I'm going to try to get the Democrat elected in my district. And that I respect, although even there, I would say we have to be careful not to fall into the victim pattern, the pattern of complaint.
Sure.
Oh, somebody's doing something to me.
Well, I want to talk more about that up next on the financialsurvivalnetwork.com with Gary Stokes, Kerry Lutz, 1230 WBZT. Hi, it's Kerry Lutz. I recently decided to move my retirement account into physical precious metals to hedge against the coming times. If you want to move an existing retirement account into physical precious metals that you can hold in your hand, tax-free, there's no company that can do it more quickly and efficiently than Regal Assets. It took them just 24 hours to open my new IRA account, and all I had to do was fill out one simple form. The best part is that Regal Assets does all the work for you. They cover the setup and administrative costs for 2013. If you're interested in making the same move I did, call 855-678-6620, 855-678-6620. That's 855-678-6620, or visit them at regalassets.com. You'll be glad you did, and tell them Kerry sent you. We're back on the Financial Survival Network. Kerry Lutz. We're talking with Gary Stokes, author, on the financialsurvivalnetwork.com, 1230 WBZT. So, Gary, one thing, when I'm talking about Obamacare, put it this way, I've taken major steps to improve my health. And when you improve your physical health, you can't help but improve your internal happiness as well. That's something that the two go hand in hand. When you improve your internal happiness, generally it rubs off on your physical well-being and vice versa. So when we talk about Obamacare, yeah, we're all victims of it to some extent. It's going to hurt your wallet, but it's one of those externalities, and if you let externalities determine your happiness and your inner well-being, then they've beaten you and you've given up control over your life and over your happiness, right? I think Abraham Lincoln said it best. People are generally as happy as they allow themselves to be. And that's really what it all comes down to, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. We're talking about ways, though, to avoid that unhappiness, even as you are concerned and well informed about the common issues of your time, So I've suggested that a terrible psychological mistake and a bad explanation that informs the human race right now in our current state of evolution is this victimhood, this feeling that my unhappiness is due to others. In my opinion, that is a fundamental flaw of awareness and cannot be corrected. Anyone on that path is just doomed, in my view, because then the person angry and upset doesn't feel connected to other people, has a hard time staying present in the moment, has an impossible time of feeling gratitude. Creativity dries up because of these negative emotional states and bad explanations, and then lightheartedness is just practically impossible with these kinds of viewpoints. Finally, as I've said before, worst of all, people in such a state don't have their love at their disposal. So these people with this enormous list of complaints, in my experience of talking with them and knowing them, is that they don't have much to give, this type of person. They're not very generous. Now, some people might say, oh, no, these people that are really concerned about all this stuff, with their families, are really quite wonderful. Well, I don't see that myself, but I'll stay open to that. So let's say then we've got to avoid this victimhood. It's just a fatal flaw of awareness. And secondly, we've got to pick our spots. We're going to care about it. So we're going to work on that. We're going to really bring some integrity to our own analytical processes. I see, of all the things I see, poverty bothers me, so I'm going to devote my life to it. That's what I did. I didn't ever think that I was going to fix it, but I picked my spot,
Well,
so
choosing your battles is important.
Yeah, and then we have to, I think people who have this litany of complaints also, in my observation, tend to be fearful. That's why they have this rush on guns and ammo, and they're fearful that plays out in the economic realm, that it plays out in going out and buying a mountain of food and sticking it in your basement, So I think a third thing people can do to avoid this kind of unhappy citizen stance is to ask themselves, have they whipped their fears? Well, most people have not whipped their fears. A very small group of people, I believe, on the earth have really thought through their own fears, worked through them, confronted them, got to the other side where they aren't afraid of anything. So I think we need to look at the relationship between fear and these really aggressive, hostile, and unhappy perspectives on other people.
Yeah, well, there's definitely something to be said for that. On the other hand, acquiring some gold and silver because at some point you believe the monetary system might collapse, people view that as an insurance policy, and just like you insure your automobile because you might get into an accident, you insure your house because it might burn down, you insure your health because you might have a heart attack, and you insure your life because you might die unexpectedly and you want to leave enough money for your family to pay off the mortgage and maintain their standard of living. And they view keeping some food, maybe not 10 years, and maybe not being an extreme prepper with a bunker and 100,000 rounds of ammunition and some major munitions. That's extreme, but, having a little bit makes some sense. Being over-prepared, just like there's people that are insurance policy junkies that have every type of insurance policy known to man and are over-insured in every aspect of your life. That's a little insane. But being a little prepared, because look at the people, Gary, who were in the path of Hurricane Sandy. Those people, I guarantee you, wish they had had some food, wish they had had some water set aside, and wish they had had a couple of guns in the house when the looters came. So being a little prepared for life's potential emergencies can make some sense too. Don't you agree?
Oh, yes. And as you present this kind of investment strategy, I find myself completely agreeing with you. So we're going to spread our investments over a spectrum of possibilities, including gold and silver. That makes sense, and having some extra food in the house. I have to admit, Kerry, I don't have any.
Well, go to PrepareWise, preparewise.com. That's our sponsor. Use the code Lutz or Liberty. You get a discount, free shipping. You got to have some here. I've got a lot more than I need, but I just acquired it for several residences, and then I consolidated it. But you should have a few days worth here, Gary, a week. I thank you for reminding me about that. I'm sincere. I thank you for reminding me about it because I don't do that, and I believe you're right. It's just a sensible thing. Not fear-based.
I think so. But of course, I think some people that sell that stuff,
they're playing on your fear.
Completely fear-based marketing approach,
and it's effective. It's effective.
Watch out! The bad guys are coming. The Army's coming and get even the U.S. Army and
black helicopters.
My turn is guns on you.
Yeah, that's a little extreme.
And maybe it will. I don't know, but it isn't right now, and as far as I can see. And so we're talking about how to have some kind of poise with all this. Can we be fully informed citizens? Can we take care of ourselves and our family, make sensible decisions, and not go around hating everybody else all the time, or hating the majority of people, or mistrusting all social action? Our government is our communal self, And so I don't want to hate our communal self. The implications of that are so profound for me that doesn't seem like the path I want to take, and it doesn't seem like a good explanation either for what's going on. want to tell you I have a blog called turmoil.com, and I've been writing about these very issues lately. I invite our listeners to go to thepoiselife.com and take a look. In the last couple of weeks, I wrote a piece called "Nobody is Doing Anything to Anybody." And for me, as a teacher of this kind of consciousness, I find that this is the hardest lesson to talk about, and it's the hardest lesson for people to hear. Nobody's doing anything to anybody, because just about everybody is convinced, absolutely convinced, that somebody is doing something to them, whether it's a family member, someone at work, a neighbor, or the government.
Yeah.
And I believe that if anybody wants to ensure that they'll be unhappy, ensure it, they should adopt the belief that somebody is doing something to them.
Yeah, just remember what Freud said, even a paranoid can have real enemies.
Yes, but even here's a warrior's view, Kerry. For a warrior, no one can possibly do anything to a warrior, because a warrior is creating his own life or her own life. And so even the tyrant, the real tyrant, is just a gift to the warrior to hone his awareness and to test this idea that I'm creating my own life, and now someone seems to be doing something to me, but because I must whip my self-pity, I have to get that out of the understanding I have of the world. Otherwise, it just distorts everything all the time. Weirdly enough, a petty tyrant comes along, and that person can be a gift to me, because I get to practice on my reduction of my self-pity.
That is a great point. We got to wrap up now, Gary, but just give us your website again, where we get your book, and you've got another book coming out shortly, right?
Yeah, the book coming out in a few months will be called The Poised Life, and that is my blog title, thepoiselife.com. That's all one word, The Poised Life. And already on Amazon, people can find my first book, Poise, A Warrior's Guide.
Excellent. And of course, there's a link on the show notes in financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Newsletter coming out shortly with tips on how you really navigate Obamacare from Jim Skinner. Really important information. And by the way, even though not that concerned about Obamacare, I did predict exactly what was going to ensue from the whole websites, the epic fail that was going to occur, and what was going to happen almost to the T 6 months ago. So I don't like to say I told you so, but I told you so. FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com. Gary, it's always a pleasure, and I agree with so much of what you're saying. You can't let your attitude towards the government, towards your family, towards your parents, towards your spouse, towards your kids, and their attitude towards you dictate your happiness, because if you do that, you will never be happy. You can't hold your happiness hostage to what other people think, feel, or say about you, because then you're never your own person, right?
Right.
And you're never a warrior.
May you be happy from this moment on, Kerry, and I wish all of your listeners the same.
Hey, and Gary, live each day as if it would be your last, for one day you're sure to be right.
Okay, Kerry.
Take care.
Good talking to you. Bye.
I know we've got a lot of you out there who are coffee fiends just like me. You couldn't go one day without your Java. But here's my question. Why do you drink so much marginal coffee? You know, that watery stuff you get in some places? There's another life, friends, where coffee is good, right, and true. Our friends at Tonks buy your beans directly from the growers, roast it to absolute perfection, and ship it to you within 24 hours. It's a bi-weekly subscription which sends the best beans on earth directly to your doorstep for the price of just a few cafe visits. They'd love to send you a free sample so you can see what you've been missing out on. Use the URL tonks.org/liberty. That's tonx.org/liberty. They'll send you a free sample, and I'll tell you, once you've tasted their coffee, there's no going back.
The Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.